Mr Speaker, 8.
Question number 2, Paul Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, what reports has he received on the global economic situation and its expected impact on the New Zealand economy?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development this week issued its updated forecast for the world economy. As the OECD Secretary-General said, the world economy is far from being out of the woods. Accordingly, the OECD has revised down its outlook for the world economy from its previous forecasts in May. It now expects economic growth of only 1.4% across the OECD in 2013, which will match their expected growth for this year. This is forecast to rise to only 2.3% in 2014. The weaker position across developed economies is expected to moderate growth in this country, but they forecast growth of 2.4% next year, which would make us in a stronger position than many of our other countries we compare with.
Paul Goldsmith.
Supplementary to the Minister, what are some of the factors behind the OECD's weaker forecasts for global growth?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, there is a range of factors. If we look around the OECD, according to the OECD's latest forecast, the US economy will grow by 2% in 2013, with the Japanese economy expanding only by 0.7%, while the euro area will remain in recession until early next year. The OECD has observed that if the US fiscal cliff materialises, it could tip, in fact, an already weak US economy into recession. The OECD says governments in the euro area and the US must act decisively, using all the tools at their disposal to turn confidence around and boost growth and jobs, and that's exactly what the New Zealand government is doing in this country.
Paul Goldsmith.
To the Minister, what observations does the OECD make about the New Zealand economy and its outlook for the next few years?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
On behalf of the Minister of Finance, the OECD observes the New Zealand economy is likely to continue expanding at a moderate pace. It notes there will be headwinds from weak external demand, a resulting strong currency, high household indebtedness and fiscal consolidation. However, I've said its forecast growth of 2.4% for New Zealand in 2013 and 2.9% in 2014 would leave us relatively well placed against other countries in the OECD. That relatively good position was confirmed today by Statistics New Zealand, which showed average household incomes increased by 2.3% in the year to June 2012, while housing costs, for example, were unchanged in that year. So times remain challenging for many households, but on average, incomes are rising faster than the cost of living.
Andrew Williams.
Supplementary to the Minister, what is his response to a report from the New Zealand Institute of Economic Research this week, which warns that New Zealand exports to Australia, our largest export market, have declined sharply by almost 10% in the last 6 months? And how does he expect this to impact on the New Zealand economy?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
On behalf of the Minister of Finance, Mr Speaker, my understanding is that is partly in the petroleum space, so I'd need to go back and have a look as to what's driving that particular figure. But I would say to the member, yes, it remains a challenging time, and of course we all watch with close interest in what's happening with Australia, because the eastern states of Australia, particularly New South Wales and Victoria, are showing signs of struggling, and a lot of our goods do go into those markets. Whereas the states such as Western Australia and particularly central Queensland is where most of the Australian growth is occurring. So I think that underscores the challenging nature of the economy that we're in and the constant work we all have to do to improve the competitiveness of the environment that our businesses operate in.
Supplementary.
Paul Goldsmith.
To the Minister, what can New Zealand learn from the experiences of other countries in light of the latest OECD forecasts?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Well, Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, there are probably 3 main lessons. Firstly, we must continue with the government's wide-ranging economic program, which is focused on responsible fiscal and economic management and also improving the competitiveness of our businesses through the business growth agenda. Secondly, New Zealand is better placed than most other countries in the OECD, and now is not the time for risky and untried economic experiments. And the third lesson is probably that promises of more borrowing and more spending including, for example, a very large housing program that was uncosted, or perhaps doubling paid parental leave, should simply not be approached at this time, given the fragility of the world economy.
Question number 3, Dr. Russell Norman. Order. I've called Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is